Take my heart, wash my soul, renew my mind and make me whole. Take my heart.
So today, Joshua chapter 2, being a genuine mess for God, or sometimes God uses the most unexpected people to do the most unexpected things. I don't know what that means, but hopefully it'll make sense as we go on this morning. So as we do, we want to read Joshua chapter 2 in its entirety to get some feel for what's being learned today in context. You know, Scripture's a story. So let's do that. Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Then Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies from the Israelite camp at Acacia Grove. He instructed them, scout out the land on the other side of the Jordan River, especially around Jericho. So the 2 men sent out and came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there that night. But someone told the king of Jericho, "Some Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, "Bring out the men who have come into your house, for they have come here to spy out the whole land." Rahab had hidden the 2 men, but she replied, "Yes, the men were here earlier, but I didn't know where they were from. They left the town at dusk as the gates were about to close. I don't know where they went. If you hurry, you can probably catch up with them." Actually, she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them beneath bundles of flax that she had laid out. So the king's men went looking for the spies along the road leading to the shallow crossings of the Jordan River. And as soon as the king's men had left, the gate of Jericho was shut. Before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof to talk with them. "I know the Lord has given you this land," she told them. "We are all afraid of you. Everyone in this land is living in terror. For we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know that you did. We know what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight after hearing such things. For Lord your God is the supreme God of the heavens above and the earth below. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will be kind to me and my family, since I have helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live, along with my family, or my father and my mother, and my brothers, sisters, and all their families. We offer our own lives as a guarantee for your safety," the men agreed. "If you don't betray us, we will keep our promise and be kind to you, and the Lord gives us the land." Then since Rahab's house was built into the town wall, she let them down by a rope through the window. "Escape to the hill country," she told them. "Hide there for 3 days from the men searching for you. Then, when they have returned, you can go away or go on your way." Before they left, the men told her, "We will be bound by our oath we have taken only if you follow these instructions. When we come into the land, you must leave the scarlet rope hanging from the window through which you let us down. And all your family members, your father, your mother, your brother, and all their relatives must be here inside the house. If they go out into the street and are killed, it will not be our fault. But if anyone lays a hand on people inside your house, you will accept the responsibility for their death. If you betray us, however, we are not bound by this oath in any way." "I accept your terms," she replied, and she sent them on their way, leaving the scarlet rope hanging from the window. The spies went up into the hill country and stayed there 3 days. The men who were chasing them searched everywhere along the road, but they finally returned without success. Then the 2 spies came down from the hill country, crossed the Jordan River and reported to Joshua all that had happened to them. The Lord has given us the whole land, they said, for all the people in the land are terrified of us. Now, there is some pretty ethically hairy, scary things going on in that chapter. And we're going to talk about those things. It is a bit of a deep subject. It is a bit of a deep passage of scriptures. And I'm going to try to make it as clear and as straightforward as possible without getting too in depth, but also by doing it right justice. Because, I mean, I don't know about how you guys feel when you read these things, but I don't feel comfortable about what I'm reading here. I don't feel comfortable about it at all. The concept of terror, it came up about 3 or 4 times. They're completely terrified of us or scared. God, and I'm like, is this promoting terrorism? You know, and is she a accomplice to terror in her own homeland by lying and hiding these people? I mean, yeah, kind of. That's what's happening. To be honest with you guys, you know, there's also her and her occupation. Can a person like that be right with God? You know, there's also, you know, she's completely betrayed her homeland. I mean, and by these lies, she's allowed these spies to report home to basically make a plan to attack the city and destroy the people. Are these right? Are these? I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things in here that are ethically hairy, scary, and I want to look at those today. But first and foremost, that's the starting point. It's called shittim or shitim or whatever. It doesn't sound good no matter which way you say it. But it's, I like how they translate it in Acacia Grove. It's called Acacia Grove. That sounds a lot more pleasant. But anyways, that's where they start. And then they cross. So basically the Israelite people came under and from the east. And you already know that they've already started war as they're recovering the land, the promised land that God has given to them. But now they're at this precarious place. You know, before Moses was unable to cross east of the Jordan River, but this is Joshua. It's his job to bring the people to the east. And you can see some of the land in the east going up to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the process in Joshua of conquering this land for God and his people. And there's Jericho. So right in that blue circle is where we are pretty much today at this point. So, as I said, we're going to jump into it. Can a lie be ethically justified? And basically, what we see in the story is basically, you know, the core, the center of the story is the fact that Rahab, this woman, she is sympathetic to the Israelite people. And there's a reason why she's sympathetic to them. There's a reason why. And a lot of it has to do with fear, being afraid of something. And that something is their God, as we'll see in a moment. And so we want to look at the nature, the heart of God, his will, what he's doing, what he wants, in light of these other kind of ethical gray areas. And lying is certainly an ethical gray area. Is it ever right to lie? Is it ever justifiable lying? Because here it's clear that she lied. But maybe the Bible looks down on Rahab. Maybe the Bible thinks that Rahab is a bad person. But as you will see in a moment, the Bible kind of likes Rahab. And the Bible writers talk to her or speak of her in quite positive light, that she was a righteous person. So how could she be righteous but practice these lying? And think about the butterfly effect. What she's doing, which means cause and effect, right? What she's did by lying is she allowed these people to go back, to make a plan of attack, to come back and destroy the city. Okay, so lives will be lost because of this little white lie. You know, but there is common denominators. I'm going to look at this story, and I'm also going to look at a different story in a moment. The story of David. Okay, because they both did something wrong. which led to something that could be good. First of all, for instance, the good thing here is God's giving the land to his people, to Israel. He promised that. And war was going to be a big part of it. Fighting and battling and killing is going to be a big part of taking the land. They're just going to get the land to go and occupy it, take the land that was promised to them by God. With David, the situation I want to talk about is how when he slept with Bathsheba, when she was married to King Uriah. But the result of that was Solomon. Solomon, as you know, is a descendant, or not descendant, but an ancestor to Jesus Christ. So God made something wonderful out of David's sin, sleeping with Uriah's wife. But is that right? Well, we know, and we're going to see in a moment, that the scriptures declare that was not a justifiable act. Even though God made, again, that butterfly effect, good things come of it. So here, let's look at these scriptures. Rahab had hidden to 2 men, and she replied that these men were here earlier, but I didn't know where they were from. That's a lie. They left the town at dusk. That's a lie. I don't know where they went. That's a lie. If you hurry, you could probably catch up with them. And of course, actually, she had taken them up to the roof because she was lying. So the king's men went looking for the spies along the road leading to the shallow crossing of the Jordan River because they were deceived. And as soon as the king's men had left, the gate of Jericho was shut. So lies. And that's the question. It's like, can lies be justified? And you can think about situations like, you talk about the ethical story about Nazi Germany during the time of World War II, when they came to the doors looking for the Jews in the different homes, and how many of them were hid because they knew that they would die if they were discovered. And so those are innocent people, and lying to protect innocent people, I think, can be clearly justified. But there's always a purpose. There's a primary intention. Okay? Lying to protect innocent. You're not lying to self-serve, self-seek, to self-satisfy for any evil or wrong intent. But the lying in that situation wasn't the primary intent. It was a secondary intent. But the purpose of it was to protect the innocent. Now, is that what we see here? I don't know. I don't even think so, to be honest with you, because I don't think here the idea of protecting innocent is the case, because these guys aren't innocent. They're spies. They're military people who are there to look at chinks in the defense so they can come and destroy it. These guys were kind of terrorists. So this is a tricky one. She's not protecting innocent guys. She's protecting offensive people. He said, we're not innocent. They're offensively scouting out chinks in the town's defense. So is it always wrong to lie? I'm going to answer that in a moment. Look at the city of Jericho. Were they guilty? Were they deserving of death just because they didn't have God? Could they have had God? Would they have had God? I don't know. It's a rhetorical question. I don't know. Is she justified by God because she decided to take sides with God and betray her own people? That's a tricky question. And I would answer that one, maybe, possibly, yes. She actually betrayed her own people by lying and hiding these spies. But she took sides with God. And I think this is the bottom line. God, what he wants, his will, his way. And it's a hard saying. In fact, it's so hard that I name the next slide, being human. It's a hard saying. Because we're living in these kinds of ethical things are very complex, very gray, and there's no quick and immediate answers like yes to this and no to that. You have to be sensitive to what God is doing in your life, what God's doing. And if you resist God, that's trouble. And this is what we're going to look at today. When you resist God, it's trouble. But she didn't resist God. She was afraid of what God is able to do. And that's a big part of many people's testimonies. I gave my life to God because I'm afraid of him. I know that in the end, he will be the reigning king of the world and the universe. And I don't want to be on the wrong side of the camp. Okay, that's fine. So let's look at David's situation. David sinned with the wife of Uriah, Bathsheba. Couldn't he have been justified? Because, hey, if it wasn't for that, there would be no Solomon. Solomon was a wise guy. He was a godly guy. And also, he was in the line of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. We need to have Solomon. So didn't David need to have that relationship with Bathsheba to have that? Morally, was it wrong that David sinned with the wife of Uriah? Yes, it was. Was it justified? No, it wasn't justified either. Why? And here's the bottom line. Because when David sinned with Bathsheba, he wasn't serving God. He was serving himself. He was serving his pleasure. God can make wonderful, beautiful things through our sins and our mistakes and our failures. He can. But we cannot be justified because of the fruit. So if a man and a woman like this, they slip, they do something that's morally wrong and unjustifiable, is the children a bad thing because of that? Never. But you can't say because of the beauty of children that justifies the sin. Sin's a sin. Is it wrong? Yes. Is it justified? No, but it can be forgiven, as we see in a moment. So Romans 3:8 says, why not say, as some slanderously claim that we say, let us do evil, that good may result. Let us do evil. So again, is lying evil? Yes. Let's do evil so that good may result. This is the whole kind of utilitarian kind of method. Well, as long as it yields a positive, good result, then we can live with the lies, the sin. According to the scriptures, we can't do that. Because here his rhetorical response is their condemnation is just. If we lived that way, if we did these things, if we lived a life of sinning and lying and evil and deceit so that good things will happen, then we are hypocrites. And that's wrong as well. And Romans 12:17 says this, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Again, there's no justification, there's no excuse, there's no rightness, morally or ethically speaking, to repay evil for evil. Well, they hit me. And I have this conversation with my sons almost every week, almost every day. I hear Miles cry, Jed, come on. But he hit me first. I don't care. You're in trouble. You cannot say that you're allowed to repay evil for evil. He hits you, you come to me, and you're going to be in good standing order. But if you hit him back and he cries, you're both going to be in trouble. And guess what? You're going to probably be in more trouble than he is because of the situation. So you're going to have to figure it out at some point, son. You can't hit someone because they make you mad. You can't do that. So was David forgiven, though? Morally, the situation with Bathsheba was wrong. Okay? Justified? No, it's not. But he was forgiven by God. Yes, of course he was forgiven by God after he repented. Proverbs 24:16. We know the Psalms, a great portion of the Psalms was David lamenting about his sin. How he compromised his walk in relationship with God because of what he did. But he also experienced forgiveness. So he repented. Proverbs 24:16 says, for the righteous fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. So here, this proverb is wonderful as it talks about failure, moral failure that happens to everyone. You're righteous, you fall, you fail. 7 times, you rise up again. So 7 times is another way of saying you do it a lot, you've done it quite often, but you rise up again. Get up and discipline yourself. Learn from your mistakes. Learn from your failures. But it's the wicked. They just keep doing it. They just keep falling on their faces. So my thought is with Rahab is this. She had a greater moral obligation that supersedes the little white lies, if you will. And that is to have allegiance to God. It is more important for Rahab to be in line with God and what God's doing, God's will. So an allegiance, to align herself with God, was more important. So Rahab's lies, okay, there's a thing called primary intention and DDE, which is the doctrine of double effect. It's an ethical tool or instrument. In times of war, there's a theory called just war theory. In times of war is a big issue in ethics. It's nasty. Innocent people are always hurt during war. Okay? People go off to war, people are hurt, it's bad news. Citizens get hurt, innocent people get hurt during war. And so there's this theory, a double doctrine that says that you're only justified to go to war if their target is justifiable. So if you're aiming for combatants who are aggressive and are coming after you and your family and your home, and you're there to defend and protect them, and you go for them, and someone gets hurt as a collateral damage, as a secondary consequence, then even though that is wrong, it's justified. That's the theory of double doctrine, okay? So your target is justified, but if someone gets hurt as a result of collateral damage, it's unfortunate, it's bad, it's wrong, but it's justified. And I think that's kind of how we can look at this situation with Rahab. Her primary intention was to be in line with God. She wants to be with Israel. She actually had a very successful life with Israel, because we'll see in a moment. She got married to the right person and became the great grandma of Jesus himself. So her primary intent was to be right with God, and so her lying was still wrong. It was morally wrong, but it was justified because of her primary intention. And that's how I make sense of the situation. And again, Jesus said some pretty big claims. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 12:30. What's more important? Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. So I tell you, every kind of sin and slander can be forgiven. So her little white lies is wrong. Still wrong. They can be forgiven. But turning your back completely against God is always the worst wrong thing you can do. But blasphemy of the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. Acts 4:19. Do you think God wants us to obey you rather than him? Again, these are the apostles literally showing signs of rebellion against the council. No. You telling us we need to stop preaching? No. So is that wrong to stand up against authority? It is. But it's right, because the primary intent was to do the ultimate good, the ultimate right, which is follow God faithfully. So who do we follow? God or the local authority? Sorry, guys, if there's a conflict, we have to follow God. There's allegiance to God. So Rahab, she's a naughty woman, isn't she? A prostitute, a woman. Now, again, I'm saying that because culturally speaking, and she's a Gentile. So again, nothing wrong being non-Jew, nothing wrong with it. But at the time, it's like, how is she going to be celebrated in the Old Testament? Because she was a prostitute, she's a woman, she's a Gentile, a little white liar, and she was a traitor. She betrayed her hometown. But she was also a relative of Jesus. And she was full of faith, and she was right with God. That, for many people, can be a very tough thing to reconcile, a tough pill to swallow. Look at what the Bible literally says about Rahab. In Matthew 1, verses 1, this is the record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, a descendant of David and Abraham. And then it goes on and on and on. And then there's this fellow named Salmon, who was the father of Boaz. Boaz, mommy, was Rahab. Boaz's mommy was Rahab. She's related. This Gentile prostitute woman was related to Jesus. And that's where I'm getting to the bottom line of this story. It's like, if God was Rahab, the situation would have unfolded a lot differently. If God was David, the situation would have unfolded a lot differently. Rahab wasn't God. She made a mistake. Or she used human manipulative techniques. David fell full stop because of sin and self-seeking pleasure. God would never have done that. And still, Jesus would come. God doesn't need Rahab's lies. God doesn't need David's sin and his fallen with Bathsheba to make Jesus. He doesn't need that. But this is humans trying to make sense. That's why I say being human, it's a hard saying. Humans, we do things. We try the best we can, but sometimes we fail. And we do things morally incorrect. God wouldn't do it that way. But the funny thing is, and this is the mystery and the wonder of the fact that God uses people. Why would God use people if we make mistakes? Because God's sometimes does really mysterious, wonderful things. But isn't it cool that beside our failures and our mistakes, God still allows us to be used? Hebrews 11. 31. It was by faith. So Rahab actually was a woman who had faith in God. She saw God, she saw her godless community, and she realized that God was coming and he was going to cast judgment upon her godless community. But she wanted to align herself with God. So she, even though being a prostitute, was not destroyed the people in the city who refused to obey God. Interesting bit of information that's added to this, that the city refused to obey God. It was a godless place. So again, if God was if it was more of an ideal situation, maybe, just maybe, Jericho would have been spared. And they would have become, apart. Because the Bible is very clear that the people of Israel were supposed to be kind to strangers and foreigners and to bring them in and to teach them the ways of God. But these people refused God. So she gave these spies a welcoming. James 2. The third thing that I want to talk about by Rahab and her strange character and her strange contribution to the Bible. Rahab the prostitute. Again, imagine that. Imagine being the person that's remember not by your name only, but by your title, by your occupation. Okay, Scott the minister. Oh, that's kind of cool. But the prostitute, oh yeah, that's here in heaven. Should be Rahab the prostitute. Over here. That's me. Over here. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, poor girl. James 2. Rahab is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions. Again, it doesn't have to do with her being a woman or Gentile or anything silly like that. It was by her actions. She had faith, and her faith resulted in actions. She wanted to align herself with God and God's people and what God's doing. She did not want to refuse God. She didn't want to be rebelling against God. So therefore, it can be justified that she was in rebellion to her own community and to the people of her own community, and to betray her own community and to lie to them, because she wanted to align herself with God, who's greater. It's a tough one, isn't it, guys? These things in our lives and our decisions we make, it's tough. It's tough to know what's the right thing, wrong thing to do. That's why I said a lot of times, when we do try to make sense out of things that we ought to do morally speaking, that don't be too hard on yourself. If you do make a mistake, because God's is he's ready and willing to forgive us if we do trip things up, and if we make a mistake and we wonder, did I do it the right way? Just be cool, man. God understands. We're people. Look at this. It's the testimony again. This is the terror aspect. She's literally afraid of God and her people. Before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof and talked to them, because I know that God's giving you this land. She knows that there's a God, and she called him Lord, which in the Old Testament was his name, Jehovah or Yahweh. Lord, I know that the one true only God is with you, and we're afraid of you. This terror aspect. Everyone in the land is living in terror, literally. So again, these aren't innocent people, and she's not siding and lying to protect innocence. These guys are, they're doing a pretty horrible thing to the Jerichoites. We've heard now the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea, leading out of Egypt, and when they have a reputation for what they did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings, east of the Jordan River, and then near the bottom. And this is the bottom line for her. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of the heavens and the earth, or for the heavens above and the earth below. And for us in our modern day context, guys, we don't have as much threat. Now, there is some threat of terror, obviously. It's a big issue in the news. But as far as God's concerned, God is very gentle. The real God is very gentle and very merciful and very graceful with the world as we know it. And we're kind of glad about that. But the thing is, he's kind of still a real threat, because a lot of people think because of his slowness to return, his slowness to judge, that he won't judge. He won't return. And that's sad, I think, because a lot of people are comfortable living their lives without God. Even though the message, the gospel, is still going out throughout the whole ends of the world, there's still many people in many cultures today that have become complacent. And I think we're going to see more of it And our world is gonna look a lot like Sodom and Gomorrah, and a lot like Jericho. A godless place that will be judged. I'm gonna skip this verse because it's kind of time's sake, and I want to look at this one, these couple verses here. You see, Rahab's not a stupid woman. She's not at all, because you see, you don't want to mess with God, and she knows that, and that's what she just declared there earlier. And so I think the reality is for us, the application to this is we want to make sure that we're in allegiance to God as well. Revelation 6:15. Then everyone, the kings of the earth. And by the way, this Revelation speaks of the future. Okay, this is the future for us even now. Everyone, the kings of the earth. Donald Trump, the guy from North Korea, and all these people, all the rulers, Hitler, Stalin, all these rulers. Theresa May, is she ruler as well? Kind of. Okay, all these people at some point will stand before God, and some will be right. I believe some will be right, but everyone will be before God, right or wrong. The powerful, even the low lives, the slaves and the free peoples. So the citizens and the working class and the middle class, the upper class, everyone. But look what they do before God. They all hid themselves in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they cried to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us. They literally want to be buried by a mountain. They're so scared. Why? Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. You think of the Lamb. You think of Jesus. Oh, the wee little Lamb. He's so innocent. Jesus is the ultimate sign, the ultimate personification of meekness. He was so gentle. He so humbly and gently went to the cross when he actually has a bit of wrath, because he's God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. That's pretty scary. You want to be on God's side. Jeremiah 16. The Lord, you are my strength and fortress, my refuge in days of trouble. Nations from around the world will come to you and say, our ancestors left us foolish heritages, for they worship worthless idols. And again, we're living in a day and age where so many people are chasing after stupid, worthless idols still. They just have all kinds of nonsense. Why are you doing that? Why are you going there? Why are you doing these things when God is here and he's available to you? Can people make their own gods? These are not real at all. The Lord says, now I will show them my power. Now I will show them my might. At last they will know and understand that I am the Lord. Deuteronomy 4 says it clear as a bell. So remember this and keep it firmly in your mind. The Lord is God, both in heaven and earth, and there is no other. Because of time, I'm going to skip these ones as well. But basically, I'm just going to summarize it. Hebrews 11. It all begins with just having this faith, knowledge of faith in God. That's it, You want to come to know God. It's through faith. It's seeing Him. It's recognizing Him. It's knowing Him. It's following Him. Job 19 talks about how even though we will die, God will never forget us. We will still be alive at some point in the future. Even if our body decays, our soul will reignite to a new material matter that will be us, and we will be there with our Redeemer. That's what Job says a long time ago. In Ecclesiastes 8, 9 to 10, it talks about fakes, people who fake it. They're interested in honor and prestige, the celebrity types. But yet God knows His own. And that's the bottom line of this slide, is God knows His own. Follow Him with faith. Follow Him faithfully. And always remember that God will never ever forget you. He'll never forsake you. He'll never leave you. But be genuine. Be genuine. So here we go. It was a tough one, guys. Very tough one. And here's how I summarize this in this last slide. Do you practice lying or any other sin as a regular habit or on a regular basis? And I know a lot of us struggle. We have our temptations. And a lot of times we justify it. But I guess the only really reasonable thing to do is just to stop it, because it's just wrong. And if you know it's wrong, you still struggle with it, I understand. And I think God understands as well. Be in prayer over these things. So for here, especially with Bathsheba, lying for a greater purpose, like to protect the innocent, it can be justified. But self-serving, self-seeking, attention-seeking, manipulative, and habitual lying, it can't be justified. Make God and your allegiance to him, your primary intention. Sometimes you may trip up and fail, but that's okay. It is what being human's all about. If God lived your life for you, you'd be perfect. But he's not. So be bold, be brave. He's still with you. That's what he said in the first chapter of Joshua. You know what? I'm with you. Be bold, be brave. You know? We're still human. We might make mistakes, but we need to know that God's with us. And as long as we're humble and we are responsive to him, he will change us. He will grow us up and he will develop us. The bottom line is this. You want to be on God's side. It is scary to be a God follower. You'll be rejected and unloved because of it. You may even have to break off from relationships and stand alone at times. But God is the ultimate authority. Many people wrongly think that they are getting away with foolish rebellion. But the Bible makes it very clear that they are not. So don't be fooled. If you're playing games with God, please stop now and just give your whole heart and life to him. It's so worth it. Again, none of us are perfect and none of us can follow this picture probably to the T. But it's nice to think about it. It's nice to fix and align your mind to these things. I certainly need to do it from time to time. And I know we all do, we can feel guilty a lot of times when looking at these things. But I think the guilt's okay because what it does is it shows you that you're still responsive to him. And you still have that consciousness that's alive and responsive to these things. And that's good. But that with humility, trust in God. Turn to God. Know he's a forgiving, loving God. And be encouraged, be strengthened as we're living in a very, like I said before, difficult time where the ways of the world is just saturated with wrongness. And we don't want to be tainted by it. And sometimes we might find ourselves, because of our upbringing, doing these things. But you know what? It's okay. Clean it up. Your failures, don't let them keep you down. Walk with God and know that he will work these things out. And the Bible talks about it. I could put a ton more scriptures about how, he's trying to perfect us, through, our obedience, our trust in him.